Well, welcome back, everybody. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you call the roll? Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales. Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willits.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent. All righty. We have minutes from February 13th up for approval.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes from the work session regular meeting on February 13th, 2024.
Second.
Good motion, a second, Clerk? Stead.
Yes.
Willits.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. And next up, the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we remove RES-77-24 and RES-78-24 from the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Second.
Without objection. All right, we'll take up the rest first.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Clerk? Stead.
Yes.
Willits.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES-77-24 and RES-78-24.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Madam Mayor, there's been some conversations about these two actions, which would give staff approval for affordability measures. Previous councils have approved staff level approval. I think the consideration from council members was, do we want to continue to see that on the consent agenda or not? I think there's some efficiency considerations that have been brought to our attention that this might slow down the approval of some. So there's that tension there between providing the efficiency that we need on affordability, but also having this on the agenda on a weekly basis. So I'll let other council members speak to that if they'd like to, but that's why that was pulled off and we're having separate consideration of it.
Madam Mayor.
Sure. Just in response to that, I appreciate the discussion. The reason that I've asked staff to bring this forward is, as you said, for efficiency. I don't want government and our calendars to get in the way of our encouragement and support of affordability. And it's for that reason that we've heard from staff that this would be a solution.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the staff's authority to do this, and I certainly seek efficiencies and don't want to slow down the process. I would request of staff that we see a regular report. I don't know if that's monthly or what that cadence looks like, but that would include the location, the units, the value of the deferred fees that we're seeing.
I'll take that as direction to staff, and that will be provided.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I think in addition to the affordability, there's probably a sustainability component there as well, because I'm imagining that would have the same or similar effect if we were able to approve those on the consent agenda for those types of incentives. There's probably a situation in July, another one in December, and probably another one in January with the way that council has meetings that are off due to holidays. Or due to break, where if we were to continue to see these in the consent agenda, delays might possibly exist up to a month. And when somebody's trying to get affordable housing online, I don't want to be the person who's delaying that process, even by a month, or all the cascading delays that might result from that for a month. These are all things that I think I would be approving without question every single time they come forward. And so I don't mind not seeing them on the agenda. I do think that there's probably a third way to get regular reports back on these things so we know that they're happening. We can reach back out to our community members and let them know that it's happening and communicate about it as well. But I would hate for us to have a requirement of them being on the consent agenda and council meeting delays prevent, good things from actually happening. So I'll certainly support the motion.
Madam Mayor, seeing as our new zoning code went into effect December 1st, I feel that these motions are a little too premature. I would like to continue to see what's happening and what kind of agreements we're working on as part of the affordability, and believe that the community would like to see those as well. As far as being a delay, I could see that happening because there are times when we're off for weeks, but we got to understand that's not just with the affordability, that those delays affect everything else and have a cascading effect to what's being built in the community and what's being approved. And I would think as a council, maybe we should go back and look at that root cause is either changing meetings as needed or, maybe we're coming in a little bit, maybe we don't have that 2 weeks, maybe it's a 1 week off in summer. So from a transparency point and the newness of our zoning code only being in effect for 2 months, I would not approve these ordinances.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'll be voting against the motion. The zoning code is less than 3 months old. It's still an infant, and there's not hundreds of these waivers waiting in the queue. There is a handful. I know the new zoning code created a lot more ways for the city to react to market forces. And, we had significant policy discussions on both of these, but to make this administrative change in such a small amount of time from when the zoning code has been implemented seems to be taking advantage of its newness. And I think transparency is accountability. So I'll be voting against the motion.
All right, thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
No.
Corliss,
No.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
3 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. And I'll ask our housing staff who's in the room to provide that transparent monthly report. If let's start with monthly, and if they're happening monthly, it makes sense. If there's a month without, let's have that be part of the report so we can provide that transparency to the council and to the public. Great. Thank you. And next up, sorry, I've got to turn my pages just a second. We will move, no ordinances, so we're going to move into special business. We have some appointments today.
Well, Madam Mayor.
Oh, did I skip something?
No, you didn't. I just noticed that on the consent agenda, one of those things was actually the approval and a contract with our final finance report and our auditors. I think Sabrina was maybe here earlier for that and probably just left. But I just wanted to say thank you to all the, hard work that she puts into that. It's a huge, huge amount of work. And I know that when those reports get finished, it's a big deal. And I think that was item number 3 on that contract. So I just wanted to offer my thanks to her. I think she was here and hopefully we can relay that to her.
Thank you for flagging that. Appreciate it. Okay, so we have some appointments today. Is Katie Pagan here? Oh, hello, sorry. All right, and we've got Stella Thornfeld here as well. Wonderful. So I'm going to actually take these separately or ask that they be taken separately because of the different years. But I want to thank Stella and Katie for volunteering to serve on our Public Works Commission. Stella as our student commissioner, and that's why her appointment is proposed to be a year, and then Katie for a full 4-year term. Really appreciate it. And at the end of this, I've got something for both of you.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of Stella Thornfelt to the Public Works Commission for a 1-year term ending February 27th, 2025.
Without objection. All right, Stella, you are now official. You're welcome to say something if you'd like, but there's no need to if you'd rather not. Awesome. Yeah, please come up.
I'd just like to say that I'm really grateful for this opportunity and to act in the community in this fashion. And it's a true honor. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Here, let me hand this to you.
Madam Mayor, just a quick comment. We have quite a few different youth commission positions, but they don't always get filled. I think because it takes a really ambitious person to jump in there and do it and to want to hang out with a bunch of adult commissioners. So I just wanted to say thank you for jumping in and doing this. It's such a great way to get involved at the city at a young age. And it's always kind of exciting to see like where the path might go next. So thanks so much for jumping in and doing this important role.
Madam Mayor, I just want to add, I've served on commissions with student commissioners, and it's such a valuable perspective. It takes so many of us in the city to keep it moving in the right direction. And so really appreciate your perspective. And I hope that you'll speak up often and ask questions and, do what you can to represent your perspective on the commission. Thank you for your work.
All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of Katie Pagan to the Public Works Commission for a 4-year term ending February 27th, 2028.
Without objection. All right, Katie, you are now official too. You're welcome to come up, say something if you'd like, but again, not required. Okay, well, I'm going to pop down to hand you this pin and binder while we take up the next unanimous consent. Is BJ Kerwin here? No, okay. You can jump in.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the reappointment of William B.J. Kerwin to the Boise Plumbing, Mechanical, and Fuel Gas Board for a 4-year term ending February 27th, 2028.
Without objection.
Hearing none, it is so ordered. We don't, I'm ask unanimous consent.
Without objection.
All right,
I don't-
BJ
I don't think we need the
Kerwin is
clerk.
official. Was there an objection?
No objection.
All righty. I want to thank Mr. Kerwin for this is a reappointment. So his at least 4-year service he's already provided to the city on this board, as well as for his willingness to continue. We really appreciate it. And with that, I see Eric Bomoria has taken the mic. We will hear from Eric, the quarterly report for Q1.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We have 2 budget-related presentations for you today. The first one will be on our quarterly report. The quarterly report was included in your packet and on the within the agenda materials. You can see the cover for this quarterly report. We did move to a new format for the quarterly report beginning last year. We moved to an exception-based format, really with a concentration on information that can be used for decision-making. We also strive to improve the document's readability with an enhanced focus on operations. So we added some new sections to the quarterly report. We added an overtime analysis, a vacancy status, as well as an IBC look back. So members of the public and the council can see what's been approved subsequent to the adoption of the budget. Moving to an exception-based format also resulted in some efficiencies from a preparation standpoint. I'm going to focus on the general fund primarily within this presentation. You can see here a snapshot from page 9 of the report showing our revenues. You can see that through the first quarter, we've received 5.9% of our budgeted revenues. While that number might seem low, that is very much in line with expectations. 3 of our most significant revenue categories typically don't see any activity until the second quarter, that being sales tax, property tax, and liquor tax. So again, that 5.9% is in line with what we'd expect, and we do at this time expect our revenues to meet budget. From an expenditure standpoint, through 25% of the year, we've spent 25% of our budget. Our personnel savings were greater due to a continued high vacancy level, but some of those savings were offset by one-time compensation and other items that are incurred within the first quarter. I'll note that those higher vacancy levels, we have seen reduction as compared to even where we were, 6 months ago. So we are making progress towards filling our positions. For our maintenance and operations, there are certain categories that are front-loaded at the beginning of the year. Things like software maintenance, insurance expenses, and certain transfers. So being at that 26% year-to-date level, slightly above the benchmark, but again, in line with expectations. You can see on this slide unemployment levels within Boise, within Idaho, as well as within the United States. And you can see that Boise compares favorably with all those other agencies. And over the course of the first quarter, unemployment rate actually ticked down slightly from 2.8% at the beginning of the quarter to 2.7% in December. Overall, general fund revenues are projected to meet budgeted levels. We may see within our departmental revenue category, we might see improvement even above and beyond the budgeted levels. We do expect expenditures to be at or below budgeted levels, driven primarily by vacancies. Again, vacancy levels are decreasing, still higher than before. M&O expenses are projected to end the year below budget. The report does include a narrative around economic conditions. We continue to see low unemployment, albeit with high interest rates. And some of those inflationary pressures are improving, although still high. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions on our quarterly report.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I had some questions, Eric. Thank you so much, and thanks for the new format. Couple of things, and if you don't know these instantly, I mean, you could certainly follow up, but I was very curious about the overtime in human resources. That seemed like it was an outsized percentage. And then also, obviously, with the police and the 80, it looked like there was 80 some openings that might account for that extra overtime. Could you speak to that at all?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willetts, regarding the overtime, I would have to return later or provide that information separately. The overtime budget for human resources is approximately $6,000 for the year. So you are correct. We're tracking a little bit higher than the benchmark would suggest. When we're talking about vacancies, one thing I should have mentioned in the presentation is that there is a reference to the number of vacant positions, both within police and fire. Police being 87 vacancies and fire with 26. On page 20 of the report, there's a reference to the number of folks going through the academies. There are 21 recruits within fire and then 14 in police. Once they graduate from the academy, they'll be placed in full-time positions and you would see that number decrease. So when we present our Q2 report sometime late April, you should see a marked improvement in the number of vacant positions within both those departments.
Thank you. And Madam Mayor, just to follow up, more of a comment.
Sure.
We talked about the council priorities earlier in our work session, and I just wanted to note that on page 29 of this report that there is a mention about the police facilities planning study, and we put some money towards that. And I know we're anxious to see more of that. So thank you.
Madam Mayor, Eric, I've got a question along the same lines. I'm going to try to word it in a way that it makes sense in my head. I don't know if it'll make sense when it comes out. So we've got a lot of overtime use from our fire and our police because we have quite a few vacancies that are there. I'm wondering if you can speak to how much more that costs us. So like if we would be saving money if we actually had those full-time positions because we wouldn't be paying people time and a half for those positions. So actually staffing up would save us money because then we wouldn't be paying the extra overtime. Am I understanding that right?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember, generally that's correct. There are certain things that would drive costs up, such as the incentive for working overtime hours. There are other costs that would maybe would not be realized had we added positions, right? So when you add a position, you have to account for all of their benefits and think things like health and retirement and things of that nature. On average, I think you would see savings if the positions were filled. that's something we could look at for future presentations to try and quantify that.
It might be nice to quantify that a little bit. I don't think that anybody would ever be advocating for not hiring and trying to fill those positions, but it would be nice to know, I think, how much that costs the city. I think that there's probably another cost there that's maybe a little bit less of a dollar sign, and it's when you have somebody working overtime in a really, really high stress job, how that affects their personal life, how that affects their performance as well. So I think that those are always good things for us to keep track of and to hopefully push us to fill those vacancies as much as we possibly can. But I do love that you continue to have this vacancy status slide on here, because I do think it is a really good snapshot that represents when we do see savings, where potentially some of those savings are coming from, but then also, what impact those will have as well. So thank you for continuing to bring those forward.
Thank you, Eric. And you're up again, correct?
Okay, Madam Mayor, members of council, our next topic is a discussion on the fiscal year 2025 budget, really kind of kicking off what we anticipate being several months of discussion on this. Within this presentation, we'll do just a high-level overview on what is the budget development process. I'll set some context, doing an overview on the fiscal year 24 adopted budget. We'll do a high-level fiscal year 25 forecast overview. I'll speak just briefly to public access to real-time budget and actuals information, and then we can talk budget process next steps. So as we begin this conversation, thinking about the budget development process, there's really a couple of high-level objectives that we seek to satisfy when we develop the budget. First and foremost is ensuring that funding for the next fiscal year aligns with our current values and priorities. Secondly, resolving any differences between anticipated revenues and expenditures. I'll note that through the annual budget process, we're not resetting the entire budget for the organization. There are a significant portion of the expenses which are ongoing, primarily that being personnel. When we do look to make changes, whether it be increases to people or maintenance and operations or any other kinds of increases, we take a multi-year approach to ensure that any adjustments we make are sustainable beyond just the upcoming fiscal year. As you look at the fiscal year 24 budget, you can see that in total, not including the contingent appropriation, there was planned expenses of $747.1 million. The majority of that being in enterprise funds, approximately 50%, 40% in the general fund, and then you can see capital fund and other funds coming in at under 10%. When we talk about the general fund, which represented about $300 million in fiscal year 24's adopted budget, we're talking about operating costs associated with general government services, things like police, fire, library, parks and recreation. That general fund, the general fund is primarily supported by taxes. The capital funds in fiscal year 24 were approximately $27 million. Our capital funds account for infrastructure projects, major equipment, and major repairs and maintenance, again, for our general government functions. The primary funding sources for our capital funds are taxes. We do an annual transfer from the general fund to the capital fund, as well as development impact fees. Our enterprise funds in the fiscal year 24's adopted budget were $367 million. Within our enterprise funds, we account for both operating and capital expenses for the airport, solid waste, geothermal, and water renewal funds. Our enterprise funds are primarily supported by our service users. And then other funds, there's a wide variety of funds that are included in that 7%. Things including our debt service fund, risk and workers' comp, health, housing, and our fleet maintenance fund. As we head into the fiscal year 25 process, we work to update every single revenue and expenditure category. For our revenues and our budgeted revenue estimates, we seek to reflect information both from prior year actuals, pulling in current year trends, as well as any available economic data. We cost each position individually, accounting for the latest salary levels and all benefits. We include updated costs for all non-discretionary, non-personnel items, things like fuel or utilities, software maintenance. And then we account for any formulaic increases, such as VRT, where we allocate 5% of our property taxes towards that use, and our cash flow reserve, where we have a goal of 8% of our budget dedicated towards that. Looking at the fiscal year 24 general fund revenue, you can see that property tax makes up the overwhelming majority of our overall revenue at 60% of our total. You can see departmental revenue at 12% as our second largest category, and sales tax coming in at 9%. Other categories are 5% or below. I'm going to speak thematically to some of the things we're seeing as we're developing the fiscal year 25 revenue forecast. As I do that, you can see the significant revenue categories on the right, and I'll either show an arrow up, meaning that there's improved financial capacity, or an arrow down for diminished financial capacity. So for property tax, as we develop our fiscal year 25 forecast, our base assumption is that we would take the 3% increase. I'll speak to that assumption on a subsequent slide. But for that, based on that assumption, we have growth assumed for property tax. Sales tax, actually, we're assuming a slight decline. We saw a very marginal decline of 0.27% in quarter one. We saw 2 quarters of declines in fiscal year 23. And even if we were to get 1% growth, we would still see a year-over-year decline as compared to our adopted budget from fiscal year 24. Liquor tax, we have assumed a 3% increase. That's fairly standard, and we generally achieve that through the budget. Departmental revenue, we have a slightly higher level of growth built in within that category, and there are a few factors that are driving that. We're seeing increased participation levels and increased revenue levels from some of our parks and recreation programs. Golf is one where we've seen an uptick in revenue, and there's a cost recovery strategy to support the build out of a new facility at Warm Springs Golf Course. We also have enhanced cost recovery measures in place for both our police and fire departments for our public safety contracts. Within development fees, we're forecasting an increase from fiscal year 24's adopted budget, really attributable to 2 factors. One is increased valuation and some large projects. And then the second is the impact of Micron. Franchise fees, some modest growth that's built in fiscal year 24 on an overall basis. We continue to see declines in our cable TV franchise fees. We have seen increases in water. We expect natural gas to level off or decline in fiscal year 25 due to some rate changes. And then carry forward or fund balance, we expect that number to decline in fiscal year 25. The reason for that is we've become much more effective at spending our resources within the current fiscal year. So the reason what we program in that category are unspent or unallocated funds from the current year. And as we've changed our approach to funding vacancies, as we've gotten better at allocating in real time towards projects and other needs, we've seen a declining level of carry forward and fund balance. And I'll show a graphic on that in just a moment. Going back to property taxes, there are two ways that year over year receipts can increase. The first is a base increase on existing payers, and that's up to a statutory max increase of 3%. Secondly, new construction and annexation, as well as retiring urban renewal districts. And for that new construction category, it's really new payers coming into the system. You can see.
Madam Mayor, sorry, Eric, sorry to interrupt. In 2022, didn't we take less than 3? Or is that just rounded up, that number?
And in 20.
Madam Mayor, Council Member, we took less than 3 the prior 2 years. So the current year, we took 2%. The year prior to that, 2.45%. There was 1 year of 3% coming out of COVID. When we were in the height of COVID, we took 0%.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think I'm looking at this maybe
We're
1 year
looking at it the
backed
wrong
up.
way too.
Yep.
The 21 is that first year that we worked on the budget together.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, again, for forecasting purposes, 3% annual growth is assumed. However, a final determination is made each year as part of the annual budget process, and that final determination is based on discussion with the council and based on current conditions. I'll note that our current foregone balance is 7.5 million, and that's attributable to fiscal years 21 through 24, where we generally took less than the 3% allowable. Going back to that notion of carry forward and our enhanced efforts to allocate resources more effectively, you can see that over the last 3 years, we've seen a pretty dramatic decline in unallocated resources at the end of the year. We've been hovering right around 1% as compared to more historical levels of between 5 to 7 and 8%. Looking at the fiscal year 24 expenditure budget within the general fund, approximately 2/3 or 70% of the budget was dedicated towards people. 19% dedicated towards maintenance and operations, with the remainder amount allocated towards items such as our contribution towards VRT and transfers to other funds. Some themes, apologize for the missed header there. It should be our fiscal year 25 expenditure forecast. As we're looking at personnel, we expect costs to go up. That's a normal thing that we would see every year based on compensation, based on benefits, and other things go into that category as well, things like overtime or temporary and recreation wages. Our contribution towards VRT is projected to go up, again, growing as to keep in line with our property tax growth that's built into the forecast model. In fiscal year 24, there was a heightened level of capital transfers, one-time transfers. There was an increase to our capital transfer that was made on a base level. So while you see a reduction here from 25 as compared to 24, it is still an improvement from where we were even 2 years ago, and that's been built into the base. No change projected for our contingencies. Our transfers to other funds are slightly reduced, primarily due to our our final transfer into our debt service fund associated with some of our public safety needs. And then maintenance and operation costs are projected to go up. There are numerous factors associated with that. And as we continue to go through the budget process, we can talk about those at a high level. We can think about things like fuel. We can think about software maintenance. Software is going up very rapidly just across the industry, and insurance costs. So bringing the revenues and expenditures together, we do expect to be in a positive position for fiscal year 25, albeit with diminished flexibility compared to where we've been over the last couple of years. One of the things that's driving that diminished flexibility are planned costs that are coming into the forecast. Fire Station 13, so we have a new fire station that will be operational in fiscal year 24. We knew that was coming. Excuse me, fiscal year 25. We knew that was coming, and therefore it's been built in, having that effect on our overall resources. Also, funding for potential ERP replacement operating costs have been built into fiscal year 25. We know that we have significant known yet unquantified expenditure needs that we need to preserve flexibility for as we go into fiscal year 25. In terms of economic drivers or economic factors that were considered in the development of some of our revenue estimates, I would say that the economy continues to be difficult to predict. We know that inflation is lowering, but it does remain high. We know that interest rate hikes have had a real impact on growth and development within the country and also within the Treasure Valley. We continue to see low unemployment, so somewhat contradictory to the higher interest rate hikes. There's positive things happening in the economy and then other things that are a little bit more difficult. But on the plus side, unemployment levels remain low. As we're in the current calendar year, we know that presidential election years oftentimes bring instability that could have an impact on our financial situation. Also, global instability can result in issues within our local economy and within our overall revenue collections. Economists, are really mixed on the likelihood of a recession in fiscal year 24. So overall, we've adopted a cautious approach. There are certain expense categories that are increasing more rapidly than our revenues, as I alluded to. And when we have that trend, it really hampers our ability to expand service levels and respond to growth. So that's going to be probably one of the things we'll be talking about as we continue to go through the budget process. I mentioned a couple of slides ago that there are some significant yet unquantified costs that we need to support in the near to midterm. Some of those could be our police, fire, and library staffing. We have some known capital investments, and then keeping up with salaries and benefits to ensure that we are still providing high quality services to the community. One thing to note is that if we exhaust all of our limited base flexibility as part of this annual budget process, addressing those above unquantified challenges will be that much more difficult in future budget years. Briefly, just want to mention some resources, for the community members or for the council, where to find current and historical information related to the budget. A good landing spot would be the city's website for budget and financial management. On that site, you can access our budget. You can access, many years back, seeing our budget. You can find our quarterly financial reports. You can find links to the annual comprehensive financial report, which was just approved today as part of consent. You can also access a link to Boise Open Book. So Open Book is the city's online budget transparency tool. This was a tool that was introduced about 3 years ago that provides nearly real-time access to budget and actual information for the community. So if they want to, get into our finances at a deeper level than what's communicated within our quarterly financial report, they can access it there. You can see things included there are our fee schedule. You can see staffing levels over time. You can see detail on our transfers and reimbursements, budget to actual at a department fund level, however you'd like to see that, and then various views for our revenues. Within each of those tiles, you can find lots of different information and different visualizations as well. This slide is not intended to be fully comprehensive, but it provides an overview of the fiscal year 25 budget process that lays ahead of us. Today, we just did kind of a high-level overview. We'll be coming before the council, several times over the next several months to continue to discuss the budget. On May 21st, we'll have a workshop where each department comes and presents to the council on various aspects of the budget. The budget document itself will be released in mid-June. We'll follow that up with another budget workshop where we go through the budget, all levels of detail on the budget, and can present any information the council might want to hear. We'll have a public hearing on July 16th, culminating with the budget adoption on August 27th and approval of the L2 form. The L2 form is what enables us to assess property taxes. From a public engagement standpoint, again, not intended to be fully comprehensive, but in April, we expect that the budget website would be made available. The budget website is an opportunity for the public to provide comments on how the budget can have an impact on them and on their community. We share feedback that comes through the website with the city council as we receive it. Also, the public hearing again scheduled for July 16th. With that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions that the council might have.
Thank you, Eric.
I had one question.
Sure.
Could you go back to your slide on foregone? I can never remember. I know that House Bill 389 restricted our ability to collect from our foregone balance. I think it's capped at 1%.
Yes.
If it is 1%, 1% of what, and what is that dollar amount that could be claimed on an annual basis?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, that is correct. It is a 1% growth cap that was instituted as part of House Bill 389. It is 1% of that given year's property tax budget. For fiscal year 25, for instance, if you were looking at that, it would be approximately $1.8 million.
Madam Mayor. Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for the information. There's a lot to digest here. I do have a few questions. I'm going to kind of start from the end of the slide and go back. So for expenses, we had staffing for police and fire and library are expected to increase. Is that based on number of positions or wage? Or a combination?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, thank you for that question. Really what that's looking at are kind of growth. So, as of now, unquantified, but as we look at staffing levels within our police department, look at, our service offerings within the library, there's been discussion about service expansions. So this slide that we're referring to is less about wage growth and more about staffing levels growth. Yes.
And with that, since we are down some positions in those areas, is it based off positions filled today or the total number of positions available?
Councilmember, that would be based, any increases would be based on the number of authorized positions, whether filled or vacant.
Okay, perfect. And another area we talked about is there's certain expense categories that are increasing more rapidly. Can you expand upon that?
Councilmember, absolutely. I'll give a couple of examples. One of them would be our software, right? So as we're seeing, and our IT director could probably do a better job explaining this, but I'll give it a shot. As we're seeing, different software systems move from an on-premises model to a cloud-based solution and subscription-based models, we're seeing really industry-wide software providers are charging a lot more for that. So whereas we had kind of fixed costs or low levels of growth as they convert to that new model, we're seeing pretty significant increases. And some of our most significant software systems, we project pretty significant increases associated with those. Another might be our insurance costs. And there's numerous drivers associated with that. You can think about as the city expands and we have more people and we have more facilities, we have more things we need to insure. The insurance market itself has changed dramatically over the last several years, with insurance companies charging more and more. So those are two examples where the annual growth certainly exceeds 3%. And that's a good benchmark, right? Because the 3% is our largest revenue category, and we're capped at 3% growth. So as we're seeing growth in certain expense categories exceeding that 3% level, it cuts into our ability to do other things.
Okay. Madam Mayor, just two other questions. We talked about an increase in development fees and some large projects such as Micron. Are there any other large projects that are being accounted there?
Councilmember, there are. I can't rattle them off the top of my head from memory, but I know that there's a St. Luke's project, College of Western Idaho being two significant ones.
Great. And final question. Thank you so much. At the beginning, we talked about it. There was an other category for expenses that included things like debt service, risk housing. Can we get the breakdown of that category?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to prepare that for the council and send it over to you. Within the budget document, there's a section that's called other funds, and that would be kind of a detail of what each of those funds are. But I can certainly send that out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you very much. All right. That was the first dipping our toe into the water and expected revenues and expenses. More to come, including some of the work sessions that we discussed today. And with that, if there's nothing else to come before us, I'll take a motion.
Move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All righty, we're adjourned.